There are so many details and issues you are faced with when selling your home, and in today's Realty Rant, Vince Arcuri and Ellie Lampert from Ellie & Associates are here to discuss disclosing defects when they're found in the home. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Of course, one of the spookier items to go with the October theme, we wanted to bring a spooky topic.
I think it's perfect because I do think this is something that, unfortunately, we were talking about before the segment. I think people look for loopholes. We want to think people are as honest all the time.
But they're not.
Not so much.
Unfortunately. And we were talking about it as well, Carly, and it does happen a lot of times when investors own properties.
Okay.
They don't want to have to disclose what they know or what they say they don't know. So they want to put on the seller's disclosure for the buyer, never lived, never occupied the property, have no information. And then when a buyer does a home inspection on the property, maybe for some reason they've decided they're going to back out, or maybe the home doesn't appraise out, but now the seller has been given that information on the inspection report. And so many now investors don't want to disclose the information that they've been given.
Legally, do they have to?
Yes, you have to disclose.
Okay. So how do we find that out? As the consumer, how do we get that information that is so desperately needed?
Well, absolutely. It's the due diligence. When you're purchasing a home, it is mandatory that you get the property disclosure statement is the form that a seller fills out to basically disclose any defects they know about the home. There still could be defects they don't know about, which is why we always encourage a home inspection. And I think that that's really the caveat that's usually the #1 reason why deals fall apart is over condition of the home. And #2 would be financing. So it's up to the buyer to do their due diligence to make sure that the home is something that if it needs a new roof, the time to speak up is before you close, not after you close. It's usually too late by then.
I would imagine that this leads into lawsuits if it's not done correctly. I mean, is this something that can come up?
I had one recently in North Tampa where the seller checked the wrong box, and there was a lawsuit over the wrong box, over the water source of a sprinkler system, that they had checked that it was out of a well, and that it was reclaimed water, and they weren't connected to the reclaimed water. It was a simple check mark that they made, and they ended up having some litigation over that. So it's not as simple as, it's a pretty complex issue. Buying and selling real estate is not a joke. It's definitely something to take serious.
Home inspection, though, has got to be, I'd imagine, you are constantly, could anyone not get a home inspection these days? I mean, that just blows my mind.
Well, we highly recommend it, and if the seller, or excuse me, the buyer chooses not to do one, they do have to sign off on a form that says, I do waive my right to a home inspection, because we don't want it to come back on us.
Okay. What else should we know? What's our take home when it comes to these defects? Because they're from roofing, from water. I mean, there's a lot of things that can come up.
Well, I think that the tendency of a seller when they're selling a home is to take a look at that disclosure and say, hey, you know what, how are they going to know about that? The safest bet is to disclose it. Many things that sellers worry about are pretty minor issues, and they're really not going to impact your value or the saleability of the property. So just disclose it. That's the safest thing to do, because a home inspector is usually going to find it anyway. Most of the contracts today are as is anyway, and the buyer knows they're going to have to make that repair. It's better just to come clean in the beginning and avoid a lawsuit later on.
Or have a good team, a trusted team where you can call and say, hey, should I disclose this?
Absolutely.
You can steer them in the right direction.
A good real estate agent's going to tell them to definitely be honest on that disclosure.
Well, and your team is full of good real estate agents.
Absolutely.
So if you have any questions watching today that we didn't cover yet, there's their website, there's the number to call to get those answered. We look forward to seeing you guys next week.
See you next week.
Thank you.